Hey, babe. I'm running late, so I'll call you when I get out.
Okay. All right. Oh, hey, wait. There you go.
Thanks. Love you.
Love you too.
You have got to be kidding me. Did you forget something, Kevin? Why is the tank on E? Seriously. Oh, no. That's what you give me. Oh, no. Thank you for that. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. No, you know what? Just stand there. Stand there like you always do, and I'll do it. I'll handle it. I'll handle it like I handle everything else in this relationship. So Kevin and I got into this huge argument this morning.
Really? Why?
Well, I'm trying to get out to the gym. I'm running behind as it is. I get in the car, and he leaves the tank completely empty.
Why would he do that? He knows you take the car in the morning.
That's what I said. Exactly. Why? You know, it's probably the same reason why he never remembers to put down the toilet seat.
That's ridiculous.
Or why he never buys the right groceries, even after I take my time and I write out these nice long lists for him.
Why can't men just follow simple instructions?
It's like he doesn't even consider me sometimes. He makes me so angry, I could literally rip my own hair out.
Hey, you okay? You seemed really worked up back there.
I guess. Kevin forgot to put gas in the tank this morning again, and I just lost it. I mean, he just makes me so mad sometimes.
Really, what about that made you so angry?
I don't know, it's just that it would have been thoughtful of him to fill up the tank for once.
Seems like a pretty big fight over a gas tank. What's really bothering you?
Well, that's just it. Like, I know the gas tank doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but he used to do those little things for me like that all the time. And now he doesn't.
So you feel like he doesn't do the little things for you anymore. What about that bothers you so much?
I feel like he doesn't try anymore. Like he takes me for granted. And he is my husband. And when you love someone, you should make an effort.
Do you really feel like he doesn't make the effort? What does he say about that?
I'm not sure that we really even talked about it. I just kind of flew off the handle. Maybe I should have an actual conversation with him.
Yeah, I think you should.
Hey.
Hey.
Ames, look, I'm sorry. I just didn't realize
Listen, I really overreacted this morning, and I'm sorry.
I was gonna put gas in the car, but I forgot.
It's okay, really. I mean, it's not even about the gas tank anyways, right? I just think that we take each other for granted sometimes.
I don't want you to feel that way. Hey. You know, you'll always be my baby cakes, right?
Okay.
Come on. Let's go talk about this over dinner. I will make you whatever you want.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Hello everybody and welcome back to this 14-part MRT series, and in this lesson 6, we're going to be going over what's called detect icebergs. And as we get into the skill, I'll explain the metaphor of the iceberg, alright, because we're going to use the term iceberg a lot, and I would like for you to understand what I mean every time I mention iceberg. Okay, as you look at this picture of the iceberg in front of you, I want you to visualize the waterline as the surface of your awareness. So the waterline in this picture represents what you're aware of. The things above the waterline are your thoughts that you are aware of. The part below the waterline, that huge mass of the iceberg, are your values and beliefs, or you'll be hearing the term core values and core beliefs that are outside of your awareness. Now please note that in the resiliency sense, icebergs are not necessarily bad. Even though the iceberg metaphor is just about awareness, what you are aware of at this point in time, people hear the word iceberg and they think, oh, icebergs are bad. They think it was an iceberg, it was the iceberg that sunk the Titanic, and so they assume that what we're talking about are values and beliefs that will always get you into trouble, and that's not what we're going to learn in this video lesson. All we're going to be talking about in the skill is bringing values and beliefs that are outside your awareness at that moment into your awareness. As you see here, detect iceberg helps to build self-awareness. You'll see once we bring our icebergs, our core values and core beliefs into our awareness, then we get to do the heavy lifting. Then we get to say to ourselves, hey, do I still believe this? Do I still value this? If so, you can reinforce that belief or value, or you might decide, what I believed when I was 15 or what I valued when I was 20, I don't value today, and so you can change it. You can't change or reinforce something that is not in your awareness. This next bullet point, it is important to know your icebergs because, as you'll see, your values and beliefs will affect your emotions and reactions. But if they're affecting your emotions and reactions and you don't even know it, then you don't have control. And leadership requires control. Being effective requires control. Even resilience requires control. So we're going to be talking about having greater control by knowing what your icebergs are, or in other words, your values and beliefs. So let's talk about the difference between the heat of the moment thought and iceberg. So heat of the moment thoughts, that's what we've been talking about so far in the previous lessons, when we went over the ATC model and described what an activating event was, or how does your mind work in the wild. What popped into your head in the heat of the moment. Those are all thoughts that are on the surface of your awareness. I can ask you what you're thinking, and you can pause for a second and you'll be able to tell me what your thought is, because it's on the awareness, or it's on the surface of your awareness. We've been doing that in ATC. We've been doing that in thinking traps. So those are heat of the moment thoughts. They're easy to tune into. Now let's talk icebergs. And there are two different related but different concepts that icebergs are made up of. Number one, core values, and number two, core beliefs. So an iceberg can be a core value. A core value is something you aspire to, And by aspire, I mean it's your North Star. It's a value, a principle that you see as a guide in your life. It orients you, it helps you to make decisions, it guides how you treat people, how you interact with others, right? Now, this core value usually translates into the word should. For example, I think people should be treated with dignity and respect. That's a core value of mine. It guides how I interact with others, choices I make in my life. So they're basically should statements. And they could be should statements about myself. For example, I should be respectful. It could be should statements about other people and the world as well. Like, the world should be a better place. Now let's talk about the other part of the iceberg, which is core beliefs. A core belief is what you believe is true. What you believe, what is true about yourself, other people, or true about the world. So an example of my core belief is that I am a kind person. Staff Sergeant Combs might not think so, but I really am. It's a core belief of mine. Now, a core belief can also be counterproductive. Let's think about somebody who might have a counterproductive core belief. They believe it with every cell in their body, but they don't aspire to it. So, for example, if one of your soldiers believes deeply, I mean, from the time he or she was 10 years old, that he or she will never amount to much. They don't want to aspire to that. They want to amount to much. But they believe that they are a failure. So core beliefs can be productive to set us up for success, but it could also be counterproductive. So on the screen, you see some examples of icebergs. Some of them are core values, others beliefs. I am strong. People can be trusted. You should respect your elders. Again, that word should is a good indicator that is a core value. That is a rule that people ought to live by. All right, we have an idea of what icebergs are, and now we're going to move to the skill part of it. So let's now think about, when do you need to go beneath the surface and figure out what your iceberg is. There are three major indicators. The first one here says your emotions and reactions are out of proportion to what you're thinking in the heat of the moment. So imagine that my heat of the moment thought is a trespass thought. Should sound familiar, right? So by trespass we mean I have been harmed, or you violated my right, but my heat of the moment thought is really like, just barely, if any, just violated my rights, or you've harmed me just a tiny bit. That's my heat of the moment thought. How much anger do you think I'm going to experience? Most of you would say a little. If my thought is you have violated my rights just a little, or you've harmed me a small degree, then we'd expect that I have a small degree of anger. But instead of just having a little anger or being mildly frustrated, I am way high enraged. Then we'll call that an example of my emotions and reactions that are out of proportion to that heat of the moment thought. And that's a sign that there is something else going on. Another great example, just recently, the Will Smith and Chris Rock incident, right? Who doesn't know about that by now? A lot of people don't agree with how Will Smith handled that. Now that is what you can call an out of proportion emotion and reaction. We expected little to none, then slap right to the face. So there's something beneath the surface that's driving my fury, or in this case, Will Smith's fury. And if I want to have more control, I better figure out what it is. And I use the Will Smith and Chris Rock incident as an example because if you noticed when the joke was being thrown around, at first Will Smith seemed to have been laughing at the joke, right? And then out of nowhere you see him go on stage and just caused a big scene. Again, out of proportion. Now the second one. The second one is when emotion or reaction surprises or confuses you. And you see, this is a TC disconnect. By TC disconnect, what I mean is, remember this chart right here? The thought themes and the emotions and reactions they drive to. So let's say my heat of the moment thought is about trespass. The emotion and reaction this should drive to should be along the lines of anger. So if I'm thinking about how you've harmed me, we're going to expect that I'm somewhere in the anger family. But let's say instead of being angry, I feel really guilty. Well, that doesn't make sense. According to the chart, I should feel anger, but I'm not. I'm actually feeling guilty. So there's a disconnect between my thought theme and my emotion and reaction. That's a sign that there is something else going on. There is something underneath the surface of my awareness that's probably driving that guilt. Since it wasn't explained in my heat of the moment thought, then what does explain it? And that's what we need to figure out. All right, indicator number 3 is when you have a strong thinking pattern. So let's dive a little deeper into this one, since this one is a little bit harder. So what I'm suggesting is that if you notice that of those 6 thinking traps, that, you know, mind reading, jumping to conclusion, the me, them, and always and everything, if there's one of those 6 that you tend to fall into a lot of the time, let's say for example, me thinking trap, what could be an iceberg? Remember that an iceberg is a core value or a core belief that somebody has that kind of sends them in that direction of me over and over and over again. How about I can't do anything right? So if I believe I can't do anything right, then when I encounter a problem or situation, my iceberg is going to push me in the me thinking trap. Alright, let's do one more example. How about if you fall into the always thinking trap? Again, just to recap what this trap is, it is problems are here to stay and it is unchangeable. So this thing is always happening and I don't have any control over it. So let's talk about an iceberg that would push you into that trap over and over again. One iceberg, for example, could be if I believe I am destined to be like this, then that's going to send you in that direction of believing you have no control. Okay, now these are the big 3 indicators. So if one of these things happen to you, your emotions or reactions seem out of proportion to what you were thinking in the heat of the moment, that's the time to use the skill of detecting the iceberg. Or if you're just confused, like, what? Or why am I doing this? Why am I reacting this way? If there's a TC disconnect, that's a sign to stop and ask yourself some questions that are going to help you detect your iceberg. And lastly, as you go through this training, if you notice that you lean towards one of those thinking traps, then that's another signal that this is a good time for you to understand what's pushing you into one of those thinking traps. Last point I want to go over is, so your MRT taught you how to help yourself or someone else detect an iceberg, and your MRT also taught you that you're going to ask what questions instead of why questions. And some of the what questions are, what's the most upsetting part for you or me? Or what does that mean to me or you? But do you think those are the only questions that we can ask ourselves? Absolutely not. Some of you are probably thinking, I don't know about you, but that's not something I would say, or those words aren't going to come out of my mouth. Or I don't see my soldiers saying, okay, what's the most upsetting part of that for me? Right? So that's perfectly fine. But let's think about why the what questions are helpful. Kind of sounds funny when you put it like that. But what do what questions do, in other words? See, the function of the what question is that they help us go deeper. They minimize defensiveness, because when we ask the why questions, you'll tend to be a bit more aggressive. Like, you want to know why? I'll tell you why. Right? So we get defensive. We tend to argue our case, but we're not going beneath the surface. So my point is, if you don't like those what questions, then make up some of your own. And the guiding principle needs to be, is this helping me to go deeper beneath the surface? Am I diving down and learning something new about what's going on for me? So as long as the question you're asking is helping you or the other person get off the surface level, because that's where you're stuck, and get beneath in order to learn something new, then you're doing your job in finding the iceberg. Now, how do you know when you're done asking these what questions? You're done asking what questions when you found the iceberg. So how do you know you found the iceberg? You know when you're not confused anymore and your reactions start to make sense or are no longer out of proportion. You'll usually start to say, oh, I get it. No wonder I was so down and I couldn't get up in the morning. It's because what was really going on for me was this. Beneath the surface, right? Not what was going on above the surface in the heat of the moment. Just reference the 3 indicators to understand better until you're no longer confused. The TC disconnect starts to make sense, and you'll say, oh, no wonder I was feeling angry instead of guilty. It's because what I was really thinking about outside my awareness is this iceberg. So it's that sense of like, oh, I got it now. Usually followed by a whoops. So when you got it, you no longer need to ask what questions. Now, the metaphor of this iceberg in the MRT world can get a little bit confusing, right? But as long as you're referencing those 3 indicators to understand better, that will definitely help you understand what it is that's driving your emotions and reactions outside of your awareness. As always, if there's any questions, any doubts, confusions going on with any of the lessons, please reach out to me and I will try and do my best to explain it a lot better. But please do so, fill out the worksheets and turn them into me, and go forth and be resilient.
Look at me.